take it over from me, my brother.
A very good morning once again, my brother Stephen Mbide, largely around Kanyanya. You're now acquainting us with the latest as far as traffic is concerned. Now you are in the north. Thank you very much, Stephen Mbide. We shall get back to you when you are doing on the ground. At this point, I do have Gilbert Sendigwa, the Executive Director of Africa Freedom of Information Center. It is a pan-African member-based organization that is geared towards promoting the access to the right to access to information, transparency and accountability, yes, in the African continent, and also the procurement of digital technology systems. He's here with me to expand more on this very, very pertinent conversation. A very good morning, Mr. Gilbert Sendigwa.
Good morning, Romeo.
All right.
Good morning, dear listeners and viewers.
Yesterday, I was looking at the report that was authored by the Africa Freedom of Information Center that purports that 80% of our citizens here do not know about the procurement processes of digital technology systems. And then you went to Liberia, and it showed that 88% of the citizens within that country did not know anything about government strategy when it comes to procurement of DTS. But the Nigerians had a lot of knowledge, 88%. They knew about the processes through which their governments were procuring DTS, digital technology systems. So here in Uganda, what is the state of affairs as far as DTS or digital technology systems are concerned?
Yeah, first of all, digital technology systems are important in enabling ministries, departments, and agencies to perform their functions and mandates. So that is very critical. But also, we know from the reports of the OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, that corruption, that procurement of information communication technology systems is one of the most challenged, in fact, among the top 4 in as far as corruption is concerned. So there's huge public interest that citizens should know what systems are being procured, for what purpose, by whom, at how much cost, and who is the supplier, how have they been selected, and all this should be in public domain.
It seems like we know everything, but not the how. How they procure the DTS when it comes to the significance and everything. Seems like that information or literature is in the public domain, but what they do not know is, in fact, how. Yes.
No, in fact, when it comes to Uganda, probably almost everything
secret
is secret. Nobody knows anything. And in this study, we made information requests to 20 agencies regarding the procurement of these systems. And these agencies included Ministry of Internal Affairs, Uganda Police, UPDF, Civil Aviation Authority, and others, Ministry of ICT and others. Only one agency responded, that is Ministry of Internal Affairs. So that tells you that actually the public does not know anything. And when they don't know anything, this is a measure of concern. Because, as I said, you know, the risk of corruption is very high. But also, there's also another dimension. These systems are procured and deployed, you know, to enhance agencies' ability to perform their functions. For example, Electoral Commission, in having, you know, a clean register and ensuring that only legitimate voters, eligible legitimate voters vote.
So that those are the types of DTS we've procured, biometric systems.
Biometric systems. At the airport, you know, making sure that immigration control is in order, that the population is not put at risk, and all that. But now, this information that is collected could also fall in wrong hands and therefore be used to harm the public. If it is not that, also, you know, in Uganda, according to Transparency International, corruption is very high. And, you know, officials could sell this data to third parties.
I see.
For commercial, political, or other interests.
Romeo Busiku is going to the UK. Via immigration, they take my data, and somehow government accesses that data. Robert Chagulanyi is going outside of the country, then they go to immigration, find out why he's going there, using the data he left with immigration. So that's what we are saying, protection of that data.
Yes.
Not falling into the wrong
Because
hands.
this is personal information which has been collected for a particular purpose, and it's for use by that government agency, not any third parties. If it is to be accessed by third parties, then the data subject should know and consent. Now, if it doesn't happen like that, someone could be harmed. And those are the safeguards that we think are very important. And, transparency of that is lacking. If you ask, for example, MTN or Airtel and all these, communication technology firms, you don't know who has accessed your data.
When you make a phone call, who is listening on the other side?
Yes, or listening on the other side, and for what purpose? And then I'm sure, some of the viewers might have received emails saying that, we have, your personal information, nudes, therefore you should pay, or if not, we are going to publish these ones. Also, we have seen I've received several messages, promotional messages from business firms saying that, we are selling this. And it has also happened that, sometimes I've felt interested in those items. So the question is, how have these firms come to know that this might be of interest to me? So
meaning someone is selling this data. Someone somewhere knows that you are interested,
yes,
and they are selling this data to the third party,
yes,
and they are targeting you.
Yes.
Something that happened in the US with Cambridge Analytica, where they were selling this information to third parties, where they were targeting these unsuspecting citizens with information on their Facebook and Twitter pages. Cambridge Analytica.
Yes. In that particular
case, similar are the situations?
Yes, in that particular case, they analyzed it to see what are the interests of these age groups and social groups. And then this was aided by this information being in the hands of Cambridge Analytica. And then these had a contract with a political party, a political contender for elections, and it aided them in skewing their messaging towards the interests and characteristics of these particular groups. Now, even here, you find that these things, are common. Even Nigeria, in the Cambridge Analytica report, it came out that Nigeria, which was one of our study countries, the same thing happened for the 2015 elections that brought President Buhari into office. So there's a huge risk that if data is corrected and there's no regulation and there's no transparency of how the regulation is working, there are huge risks. So there are two major things that should be of interest to the public. The first one is to make sure the procurement and deployment of these systems is transparent, open, and accountable.
But of course, it's not transparent, largely focusing on the latest being the Global Systems LLC company that we awarded this contract to install tracking devices in every car and motorcycle. Now we are finding out that this company is largely indebted. It's rolling from one court to another within Russia, and they are grappling with a lot of corruption allegations within the same country. So if this information were public, we would have saved this government.
Yes,
from paying a very bad deal.
Obviously, government would have arrived at a different conclusion if this information was in the public domain. But I think the fault here is on the government, in the sense that, did they advertise? And,
there was no competition.
Firms express interest and share their profile. And then on the basis of this, they selected this one, which has, these issues as we come to know now. So the fact that this was secretly done is a major area of concern. The question is, what was the motivation of government in procuring this firm in a way that they did, even without subjecting this to public scrutiny and competition as the procurement laws here prescribe? So, and then of course also, when there is openness and competition, it is possible to look at the price and compare. This firm is offering at the service at this amount. This one at this amount. This one at this amount. I say, let's pick the most competitive price.
Here's the most compelling thing, Mr. Gilbert Senduko. We have local companies that have been doing this for the last 20 years. We even had someone here on the show, and we asked, how come they bypassed you as a local company and looked at Global Systems LLC and was confident that government might hit stumbling blocks in the near future and might be forced to look at the local firms, meaning they looked at this single entity not having the necessary capacity that is needed to expedite this big process, and government might need the help of these local firms. Go ahead.
Yes. First of all, it is costly, to procure. So when you start and then you reach a point and then it doesn't work and you have to repeat the exercise, a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of resources would have been wasted. So it is important, to prevent that and do the right thing. And the answer here is to be more open and transparent. Secondly, this is not the first time this is happening. Years ago, Uganda procured a farm, to produce national IDs. And for this, it paid 240 billion. And after 10 years, only 401 national IDs were
401 national IDs
were issued.
From over 60 million euros?
From 240 billion shillings.
Around 63 million euros.
Our study shows that Nigeria, in 2015, contracted a firm to issue voters' cards at $38.1 million. Uganda's was about $62 million, or 240 billion. And for this, they got 75 million cards. So you can see.
Too much corruption.
Yes, so
they used lesser money, produced more cards. We used more money and produced only 400. Cards.
So it is said that, once bitten, twice shy.
Indeed.
So from that experience, one would have expected that this time around, government would have been more cautious to move more transparently and do the right thing so that we get the best result. But as it is, I think, we are getting raw deal.
Because now we have reports that are indicating that Uganda's digital technologies are beyond the reach of majority of Ugandans. When you hear such reports, what comes to your mind? And also our IDI index is around 1.81%. That is a really, really small number. Yes.
Yes, the thing is that we recognize the need for governments to deploy technology so that it promotes efficiency and in the execution of their respective mandates. But what we see, a consistent pattern is that these objectives are being undermined by poor, by lack of transparency and accountability in the procurement and deployment of these systems. We also note that when you look at the function for which these systems are procured, sometimes there are questions as to whether actually that was the real purpose. Look at, for example,
go ahead.
Look at, for example, the CCTVs that are planted, everywhere in the capital and across the cities and towns in Uganda. Crime has not reduced since these were deployed.
Indeed.
And every time an incident happens, people say, what were these people doing?
You saw what happened the other day when a group of 14 people, thugs, on 7 border riders attacked that gentleman and made away with all that money. There were CCTV cameras and they were just watching. These are in real time. So many of the Ugandans were wondering, how come the police officers who were already on the streets implementing SOPs had not been alerted that such a robbery had taken place and barricade off all those areas? Meaning these cameras are not being used to monitor crime, but rather to monitor who is putting on a red shirt, to monitor who is, jeering to demonstrate, meaning if it was Robert Chagulanyi or an opposition element in that area, 2 minutes or 2 seconds, you'd be seeing police. But the robbery took center stage and there was no police in sight. meaning the CCTV cameras are not there to monitor crime.
I mean, yes, that could be, you know, a conclusion. And so far, for the incidents that have happened, government cannot say that, you know, they are using these expensive systems, you know, to improve, you know, personal security and safety of the public.
Are you also worried that this deal we gave to Global Systems to actually install every tracking device in a motorcycle and vehicle might be used to monitor and track opposition loyalists, journalists, human rights defenders, and so forth?
I mean, I can't rule that out based on, you know, previous experience. So government has not so far been accountable in how they are using the systems that they have deployed. They cannot explain why, for example, this group of 14 border riders, where they came from. We saw what happened, of course, on CCTV, but what happened after? It is now several days and police has not arrested a single person. Since these systems were produced, government has never produced a report, published a report to say, these are the number of incidents that we have had and we have been enabled by these expensive technologies, which, by the way, we are bought using a loan, you know, to curb crime. So it is as if that the situation is the same as before. So we would call upon government to be more open and transparent, but more importantly, be accountable. Show the public that, you know, this is how these systems have helped. And two, assure the public that these systems have not been used for any other purpose apart from the primary purpose for which they were procured and deployed.
We also do know, Gilbert Sendigo, that adaptation of this digital technology is largely taking center stage within the private sector and not the public sector. I'm talking about the government. What largely is contributing to this?
Yes, of course, on the one hand, the private sector also wants to secure itself, especially where you have deficits in the public sector. If, for example, the security services are not adequately helping, you know, secure the private sector, they will be forced to, you know, improvise their means. So that could be one of the consequences. The other one is that the private sector tends to be more efficient and move faster in decision making. And then also, while maybe, you know, some officials are negotiating this or that cut, you know, the private sector is looking at the end result and they're moving very fast. So, like, if you look at what DTSs that have been procured and deployed in Uganda, it seems to be, to me, that most of it is activity-based. We have procured and deployed this system, but not looking at what is the impact of this system in helping the agency to execute their mandate. So I think that explains the difference between the approach of business as opposed to the public sector.
Okay, that is the private sector. What about the public sector? Let's talk about the reasons why government is not clamoring to actually get into this sphere of DTS. Besides low internet coverage, besides the high cost of running these artificial intelligence trials and so forth, what are the other factors stopping government?
I think of course, government has competing priorities. And if this is not seen as a priority, then it will go slower. So far, we have seen an enhanced government attention to digital systems when it comes to security. But, you know, these digital systems could also enhance government capacity and responsiveness in other areas like health, like education, agriculture. So I think that is yet to come, although there are possibilities that this could be of great value also.
Of course, the misuse of DTS has also been reported. How dire is this situation?
Yes, misuse of DTS is common, And that's why regulation is very, very important. It could be abused by, the temptation of officials to release state data that is in the hands of state agencies to aid third parties for commercial interests, for political interests, for other interests. The other one is that it could not, maybe it may not be officially sanctioned, but at individual staff level, having discussions with third party, and then maybe something happens, and then this information is released to third parties, which ends up being abused and misused. So that is why it is very, very important that the government, assures the public that everything is being done right. And in fact, every year, government agencies should be publishing transparency reports on how they are using and safeguarding information that has been collected using these systems. Because something small could go wrong and have far-reaching implications. We are seeing now in the US, for example, where energy systems have been attacked by hackers, where food systems have been attacked by hackers. Now, if there is lack of transparency, if the regulation is not strong, the same could happen here. And maybe you find that our power system is undermined, power supply, and all these systems. So it is very, very important for government to do its utmost to make sure that there are proper safeguards in as far as deployment of these systems are concerned. And I think one of the best ways is to be more open and transparent to the public, so that the public can be of assistance, because there is a huge knowledge in the hands of the public who can also, advise government based on the data that has been disclosed that there is a risk here, or you can, do more through this approach. So I think there are lots of values that could be, that government could harvest by being more open and transparent.
And indeed, the Constitution itself protects our citizens, in that regard. Article 27 of the Constitution actually calls for privacy of our own citizens, meaning the Constitution largely covers the citizenry in this regard. Moving forward.
Yes, the right to privacy is protected under the Constitution.
Can the citizens sue?
At least on paper. But,
at least on paper.
But in practice,
yes.
In practice, in this regard, there is a lot of miles to walk by government to ensure, constitutionalism is upheld. Whether this person is an activist, a political leader, or a journalist, to uphold their right to privacy, not to find, leaked information on this one, leaked information on that one, leaked information on that one. That is not good.
So by empowering the citizens, we need to disseminate this information so that they have it and understand what they need to do. And that's the good work that the Africa Freedom of Information Center is doing by promoting the right to access of information, transparency, and accountability. And that's largely what we were expounding on right here on Morning at NTV as far as digital technology systems are concerned. Gilbert Sendigwa, thank you very much for coming through.
Thank you, my brother. Have a blessed day.
And of course, we look forward to touching base with you again.
Thank you very much.
And indeed, you're still watching Morning at NTV. I do have Emmanuel Chisembo, a political analyst, with whom we are going to be talking about the recent appointment of Mr. James Kakoze as a replacement for Mr. Matthias Kasamba, my good friend who passed away in Chankwanzi at this very year. May his soul continue to rest in eternal peace. So we shall be taking a look at those Iyala elections. Not only that, we shall also be taking a look at the 200 million Uganda shillings being doled out to each MP, 529 MPs and 26 S officials. That's too much money in the midst of a pandemic where people are grappling left, right, and center without anything to eat. We'll be right back with that conversation and a lot more. Keep it